After commons. The corners open like fans, bronze, waist high. No powdered faces hidden discreetly behind them. Only the empire of that expectation, the piss-poor politics of privatized commons and discarded empires of urinals, queerness of the occluded pale powdered cheek, dark pleats of eyelashes lowered that brush against it, then open wide like a scalloped fan, bronze, waist high. It's the summer of 2020, no 2021, no 2022. And trust in empire is at an all-time low. Our social screens tell us so. We lower our eyes and open our overheating screens. Troops and currency are being withdrawn like faces behind fans, like liquid bodies from the carceral commons. We will spend a heat wave writing about the real, which takes many literary forms: pharmaceutical prescription, animal essay, lyric arson, emailed test result sonnets, televised testimony of flood as poet's novel. Sculptural dystopian nonfiction strobes the institutional corners, scalloped forms genuflecting some idea of deterrence, all glittery mineral violence, corporate and corporeal, aimed for a populace whose bodies remain visibly public, constantly opening and seeking relief. What form of life is this? Why pommettes, not pissoirs? Not commons, each form fan-like, each body an autofiction. The reader points to the self-same names of author and narrator. The reader points to temples, treasuries, and ruins they remember visiting, to the narratives offered as parables about the natural liquidity of capital and the unnatural liquidity of bodies, the former circulating naturally, the latter judged harshly for their despot circulation across borders, their visibility in cities that would deny their rights to existence, that is, to any space. Behind such fan-like reports, in our pale, impressed imaginary, like some blush-bound face obscuring its desire with feathery forms that open with a snap, eyes not lowered, lashes spider-like, pupils dilated, our golden real estate opportunities from those from the north or east, spending a few days in the south. This is empire now. Golden visas, golden temples, golden showers striking golden urinals, some faceless sun god in a pandemic summer tourist advertisement. Sunsets over ancient sites are first class, gradients of mineral color fanning out like lotuses or palmettes above columns and islands. The gold prospectors sweat out the temples, they visit the same restaurant. They hydrate with plastic bottles in every shaded corner. Their imaginary always pointed to this blinding whiteness, shade they require from it, this golden westness. Marble tablets of treasury etched with ancestral debts and colonial riches, their natural inheritance. They'll take it. Look up. Bronze skies streak the coast, fires flaring like fans in the mountains. Flames look at foothills that surround the capital, burn through the wide, twisting fronds and rosettes, the fountain-like leaves and flesh of ancient agaves, what the locals call immortals, designed to last, giant ornamental succulents studying the hells for millennia, their form taken for ionic columns and archaic and classical red and black vessels. Smoke turned the painted motifs black during firing in 5000 BC. If our summer's fires look at the agave's tongues of leaves, the smoke in the city center remains occluded, particles breathed as microscopic as our commonly held secret, our common understanding of some hazy difference. We all breathe it. We all lose the forest. We all swim the poisoned waters, but only some swallow, some allowed shade and relief in the corners, while others die by fire with the trees, the animals, the non-human spirits. The corners open like fans, bronze, waist high, no powdered faces hidden discreetly behind them, only the empire of that expectation, the piss-poor politics of privatized commons and present empires of urinals, queerness of the occluded, pale, powdered cheek, dark pleats of eyelashes lowered that brush against it, then open wide like a fan, bronze, waist high. On the island, in the small archaeological museum, in a high ceiling room that once stored tobacco, a room in the Venetian style built during the Venetian occupation, tablet after tablet is carved with the form of a fan, a palmette. Each tablet some funerary stone for a citizen wealthy or famed enough to commission it. Scalloped or feathered or flamed, each palmette motif crosses cultures and periods, Greek, Roman, Indo-Greco, Byzantine, Renaissance, Baroque, Empire. In ancient Egypt, palmettes invoked lotus flowers or a stylized tree of life, the lotus rising from the black swamps to touch the sun, or a palm reaching from earth to heaven. Indeed, I read, quote, the palmette carries the characteristics of the axis mundi, or world tree. Likewise, the fleur-de-lis, that emblematic emblem of the divine right of kings, also a variant of the fan-like form conferred on early French rulers by an angel. In ancient Greece, this design was a flower or keepsake and decorated friezes, columns. In Hellenistic architecture, such motifs formed flame palmettes, twisting and rising, flames or flowers. The deterrent designers of later empires and their hostile architectures, ours, for example, wonder as they stare at the hills amid the endless heat waves and corporate state fire sales of late capital. It's the summer of 2020, no 2021, no 2022, and trust in empire remains real and ecstatic, as does the real estate market, no matter the climate, the collapse of common systems of weather, no matter flood and fire. In the city, restless with debt and hunger and pandemic, along the overbuilt river, long and dry as a sentence, only tourists and riot police and addicts roam the heat-stricken streets of daylight. Refugees and developers, their figured desire, take to shaded corners. In the papers, which we open like fans on our overheating laptops, we read of the constant elections of death cults. Each regime bringing favored urban planners and heat specialists, vast new police forces and cutting austerity measures, each administration offering a stream of language we recognize in its cadences and edges of smooth or scalloped violence. So it is that the fire season is divided between tenants and owners, the hourly waged and the grandchildren's inheritance, from ancient shipping routes that trace the scalloped lines of centuries of empire, forced displacement, enslavement, and migration, or perhaps an inheritance come from opioids flooding the common market somewhat later, that is, this decade. Or the last extant ancient forest disappeared by policy and arson. What is common, I mean, is not the event of expropriation, nor the sharp scent of its violence, the ammonia odor of ships and boulevards, the private practices of their corners and corridors. What is notable is that such death, such necropolitics, should be decorated with palmette designs gleaned from immortal agaves and lotus flowers, and a stylized tree of life in early iterations of what some call society, though others claim it does not exist. We exist. Those palm-like fans genuflecting are records of so. The corners open like fans, bronze, waist high, no powdered faces hidden discreetly behind them, only the empire of that expectation, the piss-poor politics of privatized commons and erotic empires of urinals, queerness of the occluded, pale, powdered cheek, dark pleats of eyelashes lowered that brush against it, then open wide like a fan, bronze, waist high. Should spikes line the pavement so we might not sleep? Should fans frame the corners so we might not feel relief? Should our lands be set aflame so they might be seized and developed? Should waters be poisoned or bottled or turned to new and ancient graveyards and developments? Black Atlantic, Black Mediterranean, Brown Mediterranean, Black Athena. Bodies of water marked for death or tourism. Choose, they say, as if from behind a fan, its flames almost reaching. Should each policy be enacted to make movements smaller, bodies should disappear. So inoculated but not immune, we are figured by desire and its denial. Trespassing corners designed to deter, they are to teaching sustainable design and decolonial aesthetics at the universities, but this is not it. Should bodies take their pleasure with each other in pissoirs as they always have, this is also the history of empire and of the life that blooms in the shadow of its violence. It is the summer of 2020, no 2021, no 2022, and the fashion for the commons and language has duly departed the theory departments, but not our common need for relief. Dying bouquets of flowers wrapped in cellophane, like some poor offering, are tucked into the wrought iron words scripting a long exterior wall, delineating some narrow city square. Who placed the flowers there, limp against language that gauges our exteriority or complicity with its coded brutality? A state, real, trust, prime, game, empire, plus some percentage sign suggesting the total inequity and expert expropriation of our present conditions. Or maybe just the violence of the language that brought us here, or maybe that's just speculation. Even so, we will spend the heat wave writing about the real in a medieval font, then fashioning it in iron in our thoughts. By real is meant perhaps some testimony to the irreality of certain bodies, common desires, and the elimination of them from social and public life, of language as algorithm and code for violence against the true liquidity of bodies, what we have in common or in commons, and what we do not. Not trust, not prime, not game, not empire, not estate, not state, but air, water, forest, valley, mountain, tundra, stars, sun, love, desire, grief. Some solidarity against ornamental iconography gleaned from the natural, that is, vegetal life, and our denied place within it. For nature only exists if you consider yourself outside of it. Testimony to the feathery and flaming blooming of the lotus used to commemorate those still existing, that is, all of us. In the city, all its spaces newly vast or narrow, but in every case designed to discourage gathering, still there remain bodies as ever, and language. In the stream of words, I hear a hiss of judgment, rhetoric, emptiness, and cruelty, then only a trickle. In the dark corners, ornament to disguise the fiction of debt, the illusory narrative of austerity and authority, the deceit of architecture, the speculation of desire, and the violence of the necropolis. In what style should I tell this? To design is to desire, and so the stylized lines of the epic poem or romantic lyric or sober autoethnography or oral performance, like leaves twisting upward as smoke to some sun, feathered and fleeing and now falling, like a boy, like a sun, in ink or marble or stone, or the scalloped form, opening wide as a lotus in bronze, bending at the waist and greeting you in the shade, touching each corner of the public square, that common architecture for a common form of life, its inheritance, discipline, and expropriation, not very romantic. There is no shelter, no shelter, no shelter. There is no mercy either. Still, there is some yearning. Still, you come closer, seeking shadow and requiring relief, and it is touching each corner, and your knees, and your waist, and you, gently, gently.